should be self-sufficient. आत्मनिर्भरता तभी आएगी जब हम सब अपने ही borders में, अपने ही territories में बनाएं.
We are living through rising temperatures, heat waves, water stress, and extreme weather conditions.
We should step back, start our inquiry from the fact that what is this climate change? We are facing the impact of climate change more than ever before.
Sustainability needs to move beyond just the carbon emissions or just the carbon accounting per se.
There is no universally accepted definition of what we call as green.
India has a lot of domestic coal. We can currently focus on is using some cleaner coal technologies like.
Does then coal really needs to go? India is in a very unique position. We are a country which is simultaneously trying to develop and decarbonize. We are trying to meet our industrial growth, our economic growth, while also having ambitious targets for decarbonization. Unlike the West, which had the chance to
Hi everyone, welcome to Chintan Speaks. As we speak on the special occasion of World Environment Day, we need to address that climate change is no longer some distant warning. We are living through rising temperatures, heat waves, water stress, and extreme weather conditions. Globally, there is enormous pressure to decarbonize and transition toward greener systems. Green steel, green energy, green transition, green hydrogen, and so on. And honestly, rightly so. So today we are joined by Omkar, Shagun, and Akansha from CRF Center for Climate Change and Energy Transition to unpack what is this global need to go green. So Omkar, let's start with you. What is this green era that we are entering into? And can it also be seen in the current policy landscape?
This is a very great and a pertinent point to begin this conversation of where is this green era coming from. But then we should step back and start our inquiry from the fact that what is, as you mentioned about the climate change. So what is this climate change? We are facing the impact of climate change more than ever before, which is a result of global warming, which is caused by the emission of greenhouse gases. And therefore, it is within this broader picture and context that the conventional alternative which emit in a way less emissions are called as green. But then again, there is no universally accepted definition of what we call as green. And therefore, we have to be mindful while using this word green, because it should not be that we are using that term with our convenience very casually, but then with a rigorous assessment. And therefore, it points to a fact that we should undertake a rigorous assessment and inquiry of the environmental impact before using the word green.
That's interesting. But what do you really mean when you ask whether green is truly good?
Okay, so let me explain this with an illustration or with an example of transportation sector. So if we consider, let us take two, not really alternatives, but two kind of vehicles, electric vehicles and then IC engine vehicles. The tailpipe emission of the electric vehicles, they barely do they emit greenhouse gases compared to the IC engine vehicles. But then when we step back and look at the entire life cycle of the vehicle, both the vehicles, be it from mining the minerals, the battery manufacturing, vehicle construction, the end use of the vehicles, it gives us realistic and accurate assessment of the entire life cycle carbon footprints for both the vehicles. And therefore, it is important to look at that broader picture while we approach to defining or assessing the word green.
I think also talking about the broader picture, thank you for bringing in the point for the life cycle assessments. There is also a people-centric angle attached to it. So renewables definitely give us some real benefits. They make job opportunities. The areas where the projects are put in, the local communities, revenue developments are also the real benefits that we get from the renewable projects. But there are also some impacts which are which occur as an externalities to these projects. Like for example, the land use, land change, what is happening in that particular area, or what impact is it having on grazing or agriculture, or also there might be an impact on the shift to access of water levels for that matter. So I think talking about a holistic view of it and looking at from a larger picture, it should also be people centric, where communities should be involved right in the beginning through the planning processes and not just informed later about these projects. They should actually be well informed of the real benefits. That means that they should be the ones that would be benefiting from those projects. So I think there is also that angle to it apart from the LCA perspective.
So, Akanshu, what do you think about this?
So Pooja, already, Omkar and Shagun have brought in these great points where sustainability needs to move beyond just the carbon emissions or just the carbon accounting per se. So when I look at it from that perspective, of course, we need transition. We need to have, better energy systems. But as we make those transitions and as we go greener, a term we're not supposed to use casually, we are supposed to do it systemically. Because every energy system is going to have its footprint, be it in terms of the land it's using, the water usage, the mining, the waste circularity. All of the components are going to have a footprint, and that is where the food, energy, water nexus also comes into play. And it should be considered while we are making these transitions, while we are going deeper into these transitions. So as you know, the current world we are living in, nothing exists in silos per se, and so does neither are energy systems. Everything is interconnected. For instance, an energy system can have an impact on the water requirements or the water footprint, which can in turn have impact on the agriculture, and that agriculture can in turn have impact on livelihoods, as Shagun mentioned. So it's an all interconnected system, and that is why a systemic approach is what we should be, going forward with.
So, in many ways, we are not longer having an energy conversation, but a systematic conversation.
Absolutely.
For instance,
Okay, so you have asked for a case, and let me give you a very familiar case of which we have grown up all studying in our science textbooks, our environment textbooks, is of the most heard revolution in India, the Green Revolution, which started in 1965-66. Back then, when it was conceptualized, it was conceptualized on the objectives which were very relevant and which were very important in that point of time. That is the addressing the hunger, then reducing the import dependency of food grains, and gaining a self production capacity in the food grains and food production system of India. But then now, roughly around 50 years after that revolution, when we look back retrospectively, even do we appreciate the fact that we have achieved a self-sufficiency in lot of food production systems, but then as Shagun also mentioned earlier, there are always externalities associated with any of the work we do. And to just name some of them, what are the unintended consequences of the Green Revolution? Be it soil degradation, be the water depletion, groundwater depletion, the economic disparities between the region, between the Green Revolution zone and the not so Green Revolution zone. And therefore, if there are so much of consequences of this revolution, it forces us today to think of all of these economic and environmental challenges. That has this Green Revolution actually turned grey now?
Yeah, actually, this also brings me to green hydrogen. So hydrogen, without the, prefix color code to it, is an absolutely essential fuel as we go forward in our clean energy transition. It has no tailpipe emissions, on its combustion, and it's extremely, important for India's case because it has enormous potential to decarbonize the hard to abate sectors, steel, cement, and also long haul transportation like aviation and shipping. And even now, after the Hormuz crisis, the fertilizer sector, and even reducing our imports of natural gas to an extent. So definitely, the fuel itself has a lot of potential. But when we look at green hydrogen per se, what happens is we are too focused on a certain method, which is using water electrolysis of water and then producing green hydrogen. What happens in this method is, theoretically, it uses 9 liters of water to produce 1 kg of hydrogen, which is enormous when we consider our targets of meeting 5 metric million tons per annum by 2030, as per the NGHM targets. Now, this is a very ambitious project that India has just unrolled. What it ignores is the water footprint. India is a water stressed nation. There are many states and many districts which cannot take up this humongous load of freshwater extraction. So the problem now is, of course, this fuel needs to be, we need to enable the ecosystem for this fuel. But are all states and districts ready for this kind of extraction? What about the water footprint? So in this case, it should not happen that in order to have one system advancement, we are creating problems, in the other sector. So that is an essential way to look at it, I think.
I think what you're trying to say here, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we should focus on the inputs
Correct.
or what all go into, rather than just focusing on the output, that is generating green hydrogen, for your example. Similarly is the case for renewables as well. Definitely, for example, talking about a rooftop solar, definitely it is producing clean energy without giving out any smoke or any emissions per that say. And although the case is that India is definitely focusing on having a domestic manufacturing capability for these solar panels, but there are a few critical components and solar cells, and we have some other silicons as well, which are small components which
In the supply
constitute
chain,
comprise
yeah.
of these solar panels, which are heavily imported from other countries like China, for that matter. So we are keeping our transition in the hands of the global supply chain, and it is actually dependent on these volatile global markets and also on the countries and decisions. Totally depends, the overall supply chain totally depends on the decisions that are taken in other countries. So overall, talking about how we need to move towards a systemic transition, something that should also be included in the conversation is how we should build our domestic capacity. While focusing on renewables, we should be self-sufficient. आत्मनिर्भरता तभी आएगी जब हम सब अपने ही borders में, अपने ही territories में बनाएंगे, right? So that is something that we really need to focus on, I feel.
Okay. So, if renewables have these limitations and challenges, and coal also have environmental impacts, right? So, does then coal really needs to go? What do you think about that?
So, Pooja, when you frame it like that, I think it's not about renewable versus coal the way I look at it. See, when I talk about India's case, of course, we have huge energy demands that are coming our way. And especially those energy demands are going to be met through electrification, because we have rising demands of, transportation sector, in the transportation and the mobility sector. Then we have rising demands in digital data centers that are being created, then cooling systems, because as you mentioned, the heat waves and the global warming. So, of course, our energy demands are going to be enormous in the coming times. And when we look at it, electrification would be the source to meet it. So, be it coal, be it renewables, both of them are going to play a crucial role in that. And to meet our energy demands, what I'm trying to say is that renewables will play, an important and foundational role there as they also scale up. So, but what needs to be also mentioned and understood here is that, India is in a very unique position. We are a country which is simultaneously trying to develop and decarbonize. We are trying to meet our industrial growth, our economic growth, while also having ambitious targets for decarbonization. Unlike the West, which had the chance to first develop and, then decarbonize. So in that case, the models that we have would have to be very well suited for our realities. And also, when you compare renewables and coals, just in the terms of emissions, I think it's a very flawed view per se, because there is a concept of geographic invisibility that comes attached to it. So in some cases, we might see the pollution just in front of us. But in case of renewables, for instance, the mining happens somewhere, batteries are made somewhere, the battery waste is discarded somewhere else, the footprint of water in the land might exist somewhere else. So we might not be able to see that kind of footprint of that particular energy system just like that. So we may tend to be a bit biased.
In fact, I would like to add a few points about coal to what Akanksha had said, that let's go beyond this black and white lens that we are looking through at coals and renewables. Why? Because as she mentioned that electrification of services is certainly going to increase our electricity demand many folds. Our peak load is increasing year on year, and therefore coal is here to provide that stable, secure and reliable base load power. People often talk of nuclear taking over that role of baseload power, given that it is also a clean and reliable power. But then we also have to be realistic. As she said, that we can't dissociate or dehyphenate our decarbonization story and our growth story.
Yeah.
Why? Because nuclear power projects are long gestation periods. They'll take their own time. They are investment challenging. They are also shaped by public perception. So my small and limited point is that let's be realistic in our assessment, and let's limit it to our the interests, our resources that we have in our country.
So I would like to expand on the energy security part of it. India has a lot of domestic coal. That is the strategic reality which we cannot, of course, ignore. And we are here weighing this domestic coal with these imported critical minerals which go on to the development of the renewable energy projects. Talking about choosing, it's of course definitely we have to focus on scaling up renewables, but something that we can currently focus on is using some cleaner coal technologies like coal gasification, which has recently also, the government has also supported it. The government launched the national mission on coal gasification in 2020 and has also lately announced a 37,500 crore incentive to boost coal gasification in India. So this is because coal gasification involves partially combusting coal, where it gives us a synthetic natural gas, which we also call syngas, which is nothing but a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. And this synthetic gas could actually be used in further, manufacturing chemicals, fertilizers, and even for hydrogen that matter. I mean, we are putting so much money in green hydrogen. Why not we use our domestic coal and kind of elevate the efforts furthermore?
More
And-
so because, Shagun, now we have CCUS.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the carbon emission thing can be totally abated with CCUS.
So that is the plus point of coal gasification. Not only so, as compared to the complete combustion of coal gasification emits less. But when it is coupled with these carbon capture
Yeah.
technologies, carbon capture, utilization and storage, what you mentioned, CCUS, then it's almost negligible. So we are trying to use our coal in a cleaner way, and also we keep in mind the environmental aspect of it, the energy security aspect of it, and reducing our import dependence is something that is really, really important. You see, this is something that Chintan Research Foundation has been really working on, that how we should be, very well risk averse of these global supply shocks.
Correct.
Like considering the ongoing West Asia crisis and the impact it had. Like for a very small example, that coal gasification can also help us in generating DME blended LPG. So you see, such overall holistic transition, the systemic transition would actually be the way forward for India, is what I feel.
But that also leaves me a bigger question. How do we actually define what is green, what is clean, and what is truly sustainable for India?
So Pooja, when you say what is green, what is clean, and based on the conversation we've had so far, I'm reminded of this very interesting tale I'm sure we must have all heard as kids. It's of the elephant and the six blind men, where, these six blind men have never understood or seen or heard about the elephant, and now they all each touch different parts of the elephant and they try to decipher what it is. So the person touching the feet would say, this is a pillar. The person touching the trunk would say it's a snake. The person touching the tail would say it's a rope, and so on. So the idea here is that none of them is wrong, but none of them is technically correct either. And the thing is that none of them sees the holistic or the big picture or the reality, which is what I see is happening in the Indian energy system and the Indian transition system, to be very specific. So what is happening is that we are working in silos. We're trying to do transitions, but not systematically. So there is a need to move towards systemic energy transitions. And for that, I think there is a need to have deliberate policy interventions where life cycle assessment, LCA, is mandatory, where we consider the footprints across the life cycle from cradle to gate, and now even beyond, because there is circularity component to it. So after waste also we see what happens to it. So as to ensure that our systemic transitions are meaningful, are, they have depth and they're not creating new problems in other areas. And also about the other question that, what should be India's way forward now? I think for India, it's also very important to manage this transition with their security. Like, Omkar and Shagun have already mentioned about the energy security aspect of it. So whatever transitions, whatever sustainability metrics we follow, it's very important that it is rooted in our security, in our realities, and in our ambitions.
I think I would like to add to it, just summing up of what we have all really talked about here. Defining green could be, we could focus on a 4x4 matrix, which would help us in actually moving towards that systemic transition approach, which includes energy security, affordability and access, talking about the India's POV
Correct.
especially. Then there should be justice and participation of the communities, and also focusing on biodiversity and climate change. So only if we are able to look at this 4x4 matrix and make our decisions focusing on all of these aspects, we can say that green is good and green is clean. So green is not just, it shouldn't be decided on the basis of just a number on the carbon ledger, but we need to make a systemic scorecard of all these four components of these matrix. And talking about the way forward for India, we also need to realize that unlike the Western countries who initially took their time to develop themselves and then moved towards decarbonization, we and the global south especially cannot afford to break down our systems in the next 15 to 20 years and rebuild them again. We need to ensure that these systems are going to sustain in the long run. That is why this holistic approach is even more important.
So connecting on what both Shagun and Akanksha said and building on it, just taking the analogy from what Mahatma Gandhi had said, that for ends to be right, the means has always to be right, because both the means and ends matter. So in our conversation, if the goal is of first Viksit Bharat by 2047 and net zero by 2070, certainly the means or the pathway is the systemic transition, systemic thinking and life cycle assessment that will help us reach that goal in a right manner.
And perhaps that's the biggest takeaway from today's discussion. Sustainability is not just about replacing one technology with another.
Right.
It's about understanding the entire system behind this transition. So, and for India, the challenge is not choosing between development and sustainability. It is finding pathway that can deliver both together. So thank you so much, Omkar, Shagun and Akanksha, for this thoughtful conversation. And thank you everyone for listening to Chintan Speaks. Happy World Environment Day, and we'll see you in the next episode.